I'm really excited for the live action How to Train Your Dragon movie. That sentence is not something that I would have ever said since its announcement a couple years back. One of the reasons why I've been hesitant is that I'm a huge fan of the animated trilogy. I love all three movies and I watch them on a yearly basis. And another reason is because of the reputation that live action remakes have. If you're a viewer of the channel, I don't think I need to expound. But as time has gone on, we've learned more about the film and we've gotten an official teaser trailer. Although the teaser is relatively short, I feel like it gave us a great idea of some of the things we can expect. And ultimately, I've made a 180. I've basically come around almost completely on the film. So much so that I wanted to make a video explaining what gave me this newfound confidence. So if you're also someone who's been hesitant about this movie, I hope that this video makes you feel a bit better. I feel like my take on this live action remake is really reasonable, so please give my take a fair shot, and we'll see if I can help you feel just a little bit more excited. After all, I'm just trying to spread positivity, my tidings of comfort and joy, if you will. Without further ado, to close off the year on a positive note, we're going to talk about why I'm somehow really excited about the live action How to Train Your Dragon movie. I hope you all enjoy. The How to Train Your Dragon animated trilogy is easily the best animated trilogy of all time, and honestly it's just one of my personal favorite trilogies in general. The music within the trilogy is also something that I love. So much so that a slowed down piano rendition of Test Drive was played when I walked down the aisle at my wedding. That's how special these films are to me. I absolutely love how each movie dove deeper into the characters to teach them new lessons, and the way they implemented the dragons into the story is amazing in each respective film. The first movie is about embracing change to overcome conflict. This could be seen in a couple of ways. There's of course the conflict between Berk and the dragons, a war that the Vikings had been plagued with for decades. And obviously there's the conflict between Hiccup and his father Stoic, not having a strong relationship because Hiccup is nothing like his father. What Stoic wants for Hiccup isn't what Hiccup needs. And within the story, the dragons, more specifically Toothless, act as a method for this conflict to progress. We learn more about our characters because of their relationship with dragons, and the embrace of dragons is what allows the conflict to resolve, both with the war between Berk and dragons and between Stoic and Hiccup. That's signified when Stoic changes his tone from disappointment to being proud of what Hiccup has become. And all of this change was because Hiccup was discovering himself as he was building his relationship with Toothless. The second film deals with learning how to lead responsibly. Hiccup is being trained to become the chief and take lead of the village, but his idea of leadership doesn't always mesh well with what his father believes. This comes to a head with the villain Drago Bloodfist. Drago is not a man who can be reasoned with, yet Hiccup believes that everyone can change. He takes a much more optimistic approach compared to his father, but the entire crux of the story is that this optimism doesn't always pay off. The pinnacle moment of this film is when Toothless unknowingly kills Stoic, and Drago steals all of the dragons. In this moment, Hiccup realizes what it takes to become a leader, he steps up, leads his people to victory, and protects his home. While the story is heavily focused on the characters' journeys, it once again uses the dragons to push that narrative even further. The third movie is about the responsibility of letting go. Berk has enjoyed the company of dragons for a couple of years, but at some point, that's not what the dragons need. They need their own home, their own life, their own people. At its core, the third film feels like a father-son story between Hiccup and Toothless, where Hiccup has to learn to lead his people while letting go of Berk and letting go of his best friend. And yet again, shocker, they put dragons at the very center of this conflict in order for us to understand what our characters are going through. As a whole, the trilogy is incredibly well written. It shows how dragons were used to overcome conflict and mend relationships, how dragons can teach responsibility and leadership roles, and how sometimes we have to let go of something we love. I could continue to sing the praises of these movies for a long time, but enough about this amazing trilogy. It's time to discuss. If it isn't obvious to say, this film being live action is the biggest reason why people don't want it. If this was an animated How to Train Your Dragon 4, people would be much more excited. Live action remakes have a bit of a reputation. Some live action remakes just don't translate well and end up feeling too far detached from the original. Other live action remakes change way too much about the stories or characters and alienate the audience. Snow White, we're looking at you again. There's also a weird new group of live action remakes emerging, with remakes that just feel too soon, such as the live action Moana remake that's coming out in 2026, exactly 10 years after the original film. We literally just got Moana 2 last month, so I'm definitely in that camp of thinking that they should have waited longer. None of this is to say that live action remakes are inherently bad. We've just gotten so many in the last few years that issues have started to arise, which is something that happens in any genre and any form of media. As quantity increases, the chance of projects not meeting expectations also increases. When you make a live action remake, especially one that is based on a franchise that is loved by a large audience, you're putting a lot on your plate. Many people are already inherently against these remakes in the first place, and I think it makes sense why. I can think of two big reasons why live action remakes even exist. Number one, money. If you're taking an established film and basically re-releasing it with a fresh coat of paint, people who have nostalgia for that media will want to check out the remake. We haven't seen that be the case with every single live-action remake, but some of these movies have made a decent amount. And the second big reason why these exist is because there's no original ideas anymore. This does kind of tie into the money point as well. For example, Disney's most recent original projects haven't made too much money. They've found a much better success with sequels. And it does feel like moving forward that Disney is trying to play it safe. In a recent Disney investor event, D23, they announced a bunch of new animated projects. Those included Frozen 3 and Frozen 4, The Incredibles 3, Toy Story 5, and Zootopia 2. This year we got Inside Out 2 and Moana 2, both of which made a ton of money. They are running out of original ideas, and I don't really think that they care. These sequels and remakes are gonna make them more money anyways. So it does really make sense from a studio perspective why these remakes exist, but I would say most audience members still don't think that there's much of a point. So what's the point of remaking How to Train Your Dragon? Well, in order to explain that, we finally need to talk about the live-action How to Train Your Dragon movie. I'll cut to the chase. This movie doesn't need to be made, and I'm not going to argue that anyone needed it or that anyone really wants it. However, there are still some things that we need to talk about with this movie for why I feel a little bit better about it existing in the first place. The first thing we need to talk about is the director, who has revealed some details about why this film was made and why he decided to step in and direct it. The first How to Train Your Dragon movie was co-directed by Chris Sanders and Dean DeBlua. I apologize if I mispronounced, I looked it up, I did my best, I'm sorry. Chris Sanders ended up leaving after the first film, but is still active in directing animated features. Most recently, he just worked on The Wild Robot, one of the best animated films of the year, and a film that I predict will do very well when award season rolls around. Dean DeBlua went on to write and direct How to Train Your Dragon 2 and 3, so he's been at the helm of this franchise basically the entire time. I can't find the exact quote, so take this with a grain of salt, but I remember reading somewhere that Universal was set on making this live-action remake, so the director stepped in to make sure that it was done properly. At least for me, this helps push things in the right direction. The person who has been with this franchise from the very beginning as a writer and director is the main person in charge of bringing this film to life. They released a first look behind the scenes video with some of the cast members and with DeBlua talking about his excitement coming back to direct the film. It's only a 2.5-minute video, so I recommend checking it out. I'll leave it linked below. There's something about the way he talks about the movie and the care that he puts into his craft that just makes me trust him. Put aside the reasons to be hesitant, the person who loves these movies more than anyone else is putting his all into making this the best movie possible. That alone starts to make me a lot more excited. We also need to talk about the cast of this film. Now, it wouldn't feel right to bring up the cast without touching on some of the controversy. Primarily, there's a lot of people complaining about race as well as hair color for our main group of characters, and especially Nico Parker as Astrid. I understand where some people are coming from. It's reasonable to ask why the characters aren't properly represented. But as expected with the internet, some people have just gone way too far with this, and it's led to some blatant racism that is unacceptable in this discussion. It's okay to want accuracy, but if you take it so far that you're hating on an actor because of their race, you are just completely out of touch with how these conversations should go. The director has already spoken out addressing some of this criticism. He said in an Instagram comment, quote, "We auditioned many actors for the roles, including actors who looked like their animated counterparts. But we chose the actors who best embodied the spirit and personality of the characters. Since the tribe in this version is made up of descendants of the finest dragon fighters from everywhere the Vikings had traveled, which historically was far and wide." I really like his response here. And while I'm a huge advocate for accuracy, these character changes don't matter to me nearly as much as personality or fitting the tone of the original story. If Nico Parker embodies Astrid well, I don't care that she's not blonde, but that's just me. Mason Thames as Hiccup is really great in my opinion. He's a relatively new actor, and I've only personally seen him in the horror movie The Black Phone. But he was great in that, and he looks like he fits the bill for Hiccup very well. The only thing that I'd mention is that he doesn't have that classic, iconic, raspy voice, but I think I can get used to Hiccup sounding a little different. Gerard Butler coming back as Stoic is perfect. Even just the fact that his voice is the same is amazing, but I do truly think that Gerard Butler also fits the part very well. Paired alongside of him is Nick Frost as Gobber. I absolutely love this casting. Nick Frost is great in so many movies, and that is always carried by his fun personality. We haven't seen him in any of the first looks yet, but I'm very excited to see how he will embody the character of Gobber. There's nothing else really notable about the cast, so I'll leave it by just saying that everything we've seen and heard so far has just given me even more confidence. The last thing that we need to talk about is the official teaser trailer that came out last month. The barely 1 minute of footage that we saw, in my opinion, showed us a lot. They made the smart choice of focusing on one of the pivotal moments between Hiccup and Toothless. I love that they straight up showed us some of this interaction. Since we know what to expect from this story, they don't have to hide anything. They put their cards on the table, they showed us what Toothless looks like through CGI, showed us some sweeping shots of Burke, and of course, they serenaded us with one of the best musical scores of all time. As a fan of the movies, this 1 minute was exactly what I wanted. It showed me that we are getting a true remake of the original. It gave me confidence that they understand the task that they decided to take on in making this film. So between the director explaining his passion for why he joined the project, the casting of iconic characters, and the teaser showing us that this really is a true remake, I can't help but get excited. Despite a lot of my previous hesitations, I'm looking forward to watching this movie. And to be honest, it might just be absolute cinema. To summarize my take on this movie, I don't think that the movie should exist. However, if the studio is forcing this movie to happen, then we should want it to be the best version possible. We should be glad that the director has stepped in to do this right. We should be glad that they put a lot of care into the casting choices. We should be glad that from the teaser trailer, it really does look like a true remake of the original. This doesn't look like other remakes that ruin the original source material. It actually looks good. And if the movie turns out how it seems based on what we know and based on the teaser, then I'll be very happy. I feel like my stance here is incredibly reasonable, and I've even been able to convince some friends to be a bit more optimistic about the movie. So definitely leave a comment letting me know your thoughts on the film, and let me know if I gave you a little bit of hope to hold on to as well. There is a good chance that I make a follow-up video once the movie comes out, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out. And I also just wanted to say thank you all so much for an amazing year. I didn't post as much as I wanted to, but I feel like I've gotten into a much better rhythm in the last couple of months. And let's just say that for 2025, there are a lot of plans that I'm really looking forward to. But until then, happy holidays, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you all again very soon.